Many of the decisions that we make in life, many of the things that we chase after come from a place of our ego. They're based on things like desire and fear and greed. And basically our ego is just our mind. It's the story in our head. It's our thoughts. It's just a collection of our thoughts. And we chase these things often based on some kind of outcome that they think that they're going to provide, because our ego loves to try to take things from the world that it thinks it's going to make us happy. So we pursue things on life thinking that it's going to satisfy some imaginary need or desire that we have. So for example, you might choose a certain career, maybe in like finance or banking or something like that, based solely on the fact that you think it's going to provide you a lot of money and success. And maybe you do actually enjoy that if that is your career. Maybe you do like doing that, but this is just an example. But you didn't actually feel called to pursue that line of work. You just did it because you thought it was going to provide you something in life. Another example, you might choose a partner based on their status or their beauty, or maybe some sort of lustful feeling you have, or some sort of love-struck chemistry that you have in the beginning, but you don't actually genuinely love this person for who they are. This is just something that your ego, it makes your ego feel very good, so it wants to pursue this, it wants to chase this person. And this is why when you attain these things, or while you have them, you might feel actually very empty and unsatisfied. Maybe even if you worked very hard to get them. When you didn't even really enjoy the process, you didn't even truly want these things, you did it solely because you thought you were going to gain something from it. Or maybe all of this behavior is just very unconscious and you don't even realize that you're doing it. This is probably the case for most people. And this is why many of the things that we chase after in life feel very forced and very unnatural. It's because it's coming from the ego. In relationships, for example, you might want to continuously chase somebody who you know is not good for you. Maybe somebody who is abusive, maybe for somebody who constantly is, playing these toxic games with you, making you chase them. Maybe they make you feel very low. This is not a natural feeling. This doesn't make you feel good. You're simply doing it because your ego wants to chase them, because they think once it finally gets this person that it's going to have this sense of happiness or fulfillment. But it never does. Anything that your ego chases will never make you happy. I promise you. So when you start listening more to the way that you naturally feel, when you stop living so much from your mind and start living more from your intuition, your inner guidance, it is going to guide you toward the right things in life. It's going to guide you towards things that are good for you. You'll pursue things that are actually meant for you. And it won't be a chaotic, confusing mess. There won't be a bunch of doubts. There won't be a bunch of feelings of hopelessness. It'll feel very good. It'll feel very natural. Your intuition is always guiding you toward the right things. If you just listen to your mind and these shallow emotions, it's always going to want to just chase sort of like instant gratification, quick satisfaction. It's always going to want to chase after shiny objects like money and status and beauty. Or it's going to operate from a place that avoids failure and searches only for safety. The ego generally, the ego is, our mind is basically just like a survival mechanism. So it's always going to avoid pain and look for pleasure. That's its like main modus operandi. And we need to stop letting our ego control us and guide us in life. And we need to start listening more to our intuition and our inner guidance. In the most simple and practical terms, the way to do this is to just ask yourself, does this feel good or does this feel bad? Whatever the situation is, whatever the person is, whatever you're trying to pursue, you like really, and this just you get better at this when you learn to start feeling more as opposed to just always living in your mind. I started noticing this when I started meditating on a daily basis and I started getting out of my head so much and started living more in the moment. Your intuition you can only ever feel your intuition in this present moment. You can't feel it when your mind is stuck in some story or in the past or the future. So for me, my intuition tells me like I just generally have a bad feeling. I literally almost get like a knot in my stomach when I'm around certain people, if I'm doing certain things in life. Just ask yourself, like, does this particular thing, does this give you a sense of dread? I'm sure you have been around someone or have worked some job or have done something where you just felt it just made you feel very bad. And it wasn't just anxiety or fear, because those are things that we need to overcome, but you just had this feeling like something was off. That's your intuition, and it's very, very rarely wrong. I don't think it's ever wrong. Have you ever felt like so called to do something, like it just felt so right and there was nothing that could pull you away from doing it? Like, why do you think people join the military or become firefighters or police officers? You know, they're not doing that for the money really or the status. Maybe some are, but they're doing that because they feel an inner calling to do so. Why else would you risk your life for something like that? It's because you feel so called to do it, and there's nothing that could stop you. Another really good example of intuition is being in a flow state. So like a dancer, for example, um, somebody who's playing an instrument, somebody who is playing a sport like basketball, this puts you in sort of this flow state. They are listening solely to their intuition while they're doing this. They're not using their logical mind. They're definitely not using their ego. These activities require you to listen solely to the way that you feel in order to move with the flow of the music if you're dancing, to move with the flow of the rest of the team if you're playing a sport. Things that feel intuitive to us are always going to lead us down a path of good. You're never going to feel intuitively called to rob a bank or to steal from someone or manipulate or murder somebody. Your intuition always wants you to do the best thing for yourself. It wants you to do the best thing for other people and for the world around you. All of those things I mentioned, those come, like murder and stuff like that, those come from the ego. They come from a very, very strong ego. That's why we have so many wars and crime. It's because these people's egos have been so strengthened that they can't even listen to their intuition. They can only operate from a place of fear and greed and desire. These actions don't come from an intuitive place. This is your natural, your true self does not want you to commit crimes and do things that harm other people. This is why spiritual people, for the most part, generally do good in the world and aren't committing stuff like that. I mean, I'm sure there are some that still do. Some of us still get stuck in our ego at times, but for the most part, you know, people who are into spirituality, we're living more from our intuition. This is why we want to do good. We want to give back. We want to help others. These are the types of things that our intuition tells us to do. And I understand now, after living from a place of ego for so long, spending years getting high and chasing the wrong people, not treating other people well, that we should mostly just be living from a place of our intuition and our inner guidance, because they'll always bring us exactly to where we need to be. It's really imperative that you get comfortable just learning to sit and feel. Learn to just sit with yourself every day and learn to just feel everything in this present moment, because that's what's going to get you closer to your intuition. That's really all your intuition is listening to the way that you feel. And you need to start getting good at this. You need to start making it a daily practice, a daily habit. Sit and just let everything come up and just notice what emotions do you feel. Even if you think about maybe something that's happening in your life, some situation, some person, and just ask yourself, how do I really feel about this? And this takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of time to get good at. And this video isn't like some cookie cutter thing. You know, this is very personal, very unique for everybody. And you have to kind of find it. You have to kind of take what I'm saying here and apply it to your own personal life, as with any sort of philosophy or teaching or school of thought. But what I have found is that the more that you do this, the more that you learn to listen to your intuition, you learn, it tells you who you should allow into your lives. It tells you who you should allow into your life. It tells you how you should be spending your time. It tells you what you should be pursuing. The more that I got out of my head and stopped listening to the story and the thoughts all the time and started listening more to the way that I feel, it always started guiding me towards the right things, the things that I felt like were meant for me, things that always maybe it wasn't always the best situation, but there was always some lesson in it. I always gained something from it, and I just felt like I know that this is where I'm supposed to be right now. Just remember that the ego is sort of like a terrified child, and it's always going to operate from that place of fear. It's always going to try to avoid things that are scary. It's always going to look for comfort. It's going to look for things that are familiar. This is why people date very toxic people, because maybe that's what they're used to. This is why maybe they'll pursue a career that their parents, maybe the same career as their parents, or something that their parents have been putting in their head from a young age, because this is what feels comfortable to them in their mind, but it's not what they intuitively truly want to pursue. And sometimes you might have to do that. I don't know. Like I said, you have to kind of work this out to yourself. But the point of this, overall, to sum it up, is to stop listening to the story and the thoughts in your head all the time, and start listening more to the way that you feel, what your heart is calling you towards.